a lot of things changed. For many years, we have to have touch sessions and all that to train people to use the UI. But after the pandemic, uncles are coming to our office and say, let me show you how to design this screen, improve our UI. People like to book services on Tuesday afternoons. I don't know why, but then everybody suddenly realized that they were using their fridges, to store 2 weeks worth of food. So they started like really using all their home appliances. So we found that our volumes like grew so high.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Service Business Show. And today we have a very awesome lady, Jes Min from Recommend Malaysia, to join us on the show. And it's a super special episode because this time is the first time we're having a platform coming to us instead of a traditional business. Welcome, Jes Min. And maybe you can give everyone a quick intro of who you are and what does your company do.
Great. Hi, Jing Jing. Nice to catch up with you again. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. Really, really excited hearing about what you do, and certainly happy to share more about the service industry. So I run Recommend.my in Malaysia. It's all part of Recommend Group. We run Recommend.my in Malaysia and Sejasa.com in Indonesia. And it's essentially a platform for connecting, homeowners, me and you, right? Tenants, residents, that sort of thing, as well as small businesses to a base of, some of the top-rated, best quality service professionals in the space. People like, aircon service repairmen, even cleaners, pest control managers, contractor, any sort of home and property maintenance services. So we connect customers to tens of thousands of these sort of guys in Indonesia as well as Malaysia.
Amazing. How did you started this? What was the idea behind it?
The idea behind it came about 15 years ago when I was helping my father build our home.
Right.
And it took something like 10 years and 3 different sets of architects and contractors. And during the process, it was probably one of the most stressful, depressing periods of our lives. And it shouldn't have been. I mean, building a home and maintaining it is one of life's milestones, and it should be a joyful process. But instead, it was, the most depressing, stressful period because people were coming, people were going, they were saying this. You never knew whether or not they were saying things in order to inflate the budget or to give you a better quality of service. And then, if they didn't do things well, they would just go and, they couldn't really manage their timelines or manage their costs well and things like that. So we literally had 3 sets of service professionals come and go before the home was finally built. And I realized that the service industry, something that you're very, very familiar with as well, it's so fragmented, right? There are people everywhere. People come, people go. The workforce is quite transitionary in nature. There really needs to exist some sort of platform to start collecting data about these people who are good, who are not, who are good at what, right? And we measure our service professionals by 4 different measures. So timeliness, quality, customer service, and value as well. So we start collecting information around these people, and so the platform that we have built is able to match customers to the right service professionals at the right time, with the right skill set whenever they want it. That's kind of one angle, and the other angle we also try to get a lot of transparency around is in terms of pricing. So some things are fairly straightforward in terms of pricing. Cleaning, mattress, home cleaning, sofa, deliveries are quite straightforward. But if you start looking into like repairs or even overhauls, construction, carpentry, these kind of things become a little bit more hard to define. And so the technology that we are building looks at all the data sets, looks at all the input that the customers give us, looks at all the photographs, the descriptions, the reviews and all that, and get a good idea of who this service professional is and be able to match the customer and the service professional really well.
Amazing. I think one thing that you mentioned, it's fixed, right? Before our conversation started. And then also with your experience with renovating the house, would you say like maintenance and fixed is the bulk of the traffic on your platform?
I would say that it's probably half and half. So half of it is things like cleaning, mattress, things that you can easily sort of like quantify and SKU it out,
Yeah.
maybe even describe it with a time block. And the other half are things that you really don't know. Like somebody says something is broken, I don't quite know what, right? And then it requires somebody to go there and look at it and say, this small thing is broken, or, this big thing is broken and you have to change your entire compressor. So I think it's probably half an hour.
I see. I assume you have a slightly different business model, comparing with those like quantifiable transactions versus those ones like you don't really know
Yes.
until you see it. So how does that work?
Yes. So the straightforward ones, the quantifiable ones, we call the express kind of services. So this is like home cleaning, sofa mattress cleaning, aircon servicing to a certain degree, washing machine servicing. These kind of things, we can actually create products out of it fairly easily. So for example, 2-hour cleaning versus 4 hours. For example, servicing a 1 horsepower aircon versus 1.5 horsepower, right? So these things are fairly easily to SKU-fy.
Yeah.
So those ones we call the express. And for those ones, we have a business model where we connect them to the most appropriate service professional in terms of the location, in terms of the scheduling, and also in terms of the complexity of the job, right? And also his performance. So we know very clearly which service professionals are good at what, and we are able to match it that way, right? So we always give priority to the better performing ones, what we call express. And then we have another set of services where, for example, someone's trying to create a cabinet, or someone's trying to repaint his whole house, or create plaster ceiling in his house, right? So for these, the budgets tend to be a little bit more. So we don't actually set the prices for them. We give them an option of getting bids or quotations from a few service professionals, and then the service professionals upload their quotations and all that online. We do give price guidances though. So we say that for this service, based on the AI and what we are able to understand from our previous transactions, it should cost you about, say, 2,500 to 2,800 ringgit. However, here are 3 top service professionals who are interested to do this job. You go and negotiate with them. So that's pretty much the second business model, which we call quotation.
I see. So one is more like you charge a transaction fee, and the other one is like
lead gen.
Right. They bid on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. So what do you think is the biggest difference? First of all, you mentioned in Malaysia you started the business 15 years ago. When did you have this realization that, this is a great idea to go to Indonesia as well?
Okay. So I realized the problem about 15 years ago, but we started about 10 years ago. And we went to Indonesia probably in the second or third year of our journey already, very, very soon. Alex and myself, my co-founder. So I got 2 co-founders on this. One is Alex, he's a Singaporean, so he lives in Singapore. And the other one is Anthony, who is an Indonesian, and he lives in Indonesia. So about 1 or 1.5 years into the journey, we met Anthony, whom we realized had the same passion to solve the same problems. So we decided that instead of working on 2 separate solutions, we would actually combine forces and to go and add it together. So very soon, we expanded into Indonesia. We didn't know at that point, right? Obviously, but Indonesia has a slightly different industry structure than Malaysia does. So along the way, we also had to tweak our product and to localize it, not just the screens, but even down to the way the request forms, the booking forms are generated, even ways like how we incentivize the service professionals, even how we either take a lead fee or we take a cut. A lot of these things had to be customized to the local. Local.
What's the biggest kind of culture shock that you've had when you first launched in Indonesia? Like, wow, that was very different.
Yeah, I think the differences. There are a couple of differences. I think the first one being that the average job value in Indonesia is obviously a lot less than Malaysia, and probably both of these countries are a lot less than Singapore, right?
Yes.
Because so the average cost of servicing an aircon could be something like maybe 17 on average, ends up about $15 to $70 in Indonesia, and in Malaysia it's something like maybe $25, $30.
Right.
I believe in Singapore it's probably double or triple of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the GMV per job, or the value per job, the basket size, becomes a lot less. But at the same time, the volume is literally 10 times more, right? Because the market is bigger. So Indonesia has a population of about 300 million, Malaysia has about 30 million. So the volume then, is something else. So we had to do quite a lot of adjustments to accommodate the volume of service requests and service professionals, and we had to build out a team that could onboard much quicker, in an area where it was much larger than Malaysia. So
Right.
I think that was one thing. So GMV was a lot lower. The volume of jobs were a lot larger. And the other thing is that Indonesia is powered by primarily local workforce, where everybody is his own man, and they can legally take up jobs, right, with any client, really.
Yeah.
Whereas in Malaysia, we have a very large proportion of foreign workforce. So this foreign workforce have to be employed with a certain company. And so we have to deal with both the company and the workforce as well.
Mm. So do you have more disintermediation problem in Indonesia because they're all freelancers?
Interestingly, there is less this intermediation problem. Because they're all freelancers. Right, you don't service your aircon. People don't service their aircon many times a year, right? So
Yeah.
they constantly need an influx of new customers and new clients. So in a way that they are a lot, they're very willing to actually follow the rules and the processes that we have, like all repeat clients have to go through the platform, payments all have to go through the platform, because we need to collect data on where they are, the locations, calendaring and all that. And they are very much willing to follow that, because we do give them enough jobs, right, such that their livelihoods are sustained. If we do find that any of them actually disintermediate or don't follow the SOPs, when we cut them out, they find it very, very hard to build a business on their own. Probably the problem, is more in cleaning, I suppose, because with cleaning you get a client and then the client comes back again. So we do find a little bit more disintermediation in cleaning. But on the whole, I think because cleaning is only a set of sort of like a subset of our services, the effect is not large. And also in Indonesia, what the service professionals are now doing is that they're using our platform as their main working kind of system. Their main working operating system. So in a way, they take customers from our marketplace. They also put in their own clients into the system to manage them using the calendar, using the payment system, the reviews, tracking, and the entire flow.
That's amazing.
So I found that quite interesting. It's a lot harder to do that in Malaysia, where all these service professionals are their own companies as well, right? It requires a different kind of approach. So that's been more successful in Indonesia, I think.
So does that mean your Indonesia business was growing or still growing faster than Malaysia?
Yes, I think so. I think in terms of volume, it's definitely larger. Was growing higher. So the business grows at a faster rate in Indonesia, especially when you look at the B2C market. But in Malaysia, what has been growing really fast is the B2B market. So you have a lot of businesses, and you have a lot of retail outlets, F&B, right? The boom of coffee. So all of them require maintenance help, right? In order to a lot of them, they start up like one branch a day or something like that. So you literally need a lot of property maintenance help. So that has been growing faster in Malaysia.
That's super interesting, because last time when we talked about it, you were still very much on the B2C side. But now it kind of seems like you pivoted a little bit and have found the B2B side of things, right? So do you think this is a customer behavior shift since COVID? Or do you think it's just the nature of the business now? People are more tech savvy, so they look for people online?
Before the pandemic, for many years, before the pandemic, we have to have, large sessions and all that to train people to use the UI. But after the pandemic, uncles are coming to our office and say, look, girl, come, sit down. Let me show you how to design this screen. You should put this button here. You should, make it bigger because my fingers are not so small. And so, it's so interesting how they are now teaching us how to, improve our UI.
Yeah, that's so funny. And then you mentioned there another trend that you observed after COVID as well.
Yes. So after COVID, everybody decided that they want to be a free agent and freelancer and work whenever, wherever, right? So, instead of having a whole team come and report in your office at 8 a.m. every day, and then you give them the work and all that, all these service professionals are getting more comfortable now to have their teams everywhere. And
Yeah.
so then they needed platforms and they needed technologies to help manage like who is doing what, who's late, who is doing well and who's not doing well, who's collecting payments properly and who's not, right? And so I think platform technologies like, yours definitely and ours as well really would help them manage their business in a better way.
I
Yeah.
see. I see.
Yep.
Well, yeah, definitely. I think COVID speed up the technology adoption in all of these companies, right? Because
Yeah.
when they're so used to, let's say, doing shift coordination at home, they themselves, business owners, they don't want to go to the office anymore.
Yeah.
They want to collect payments and do all of these things online as well. So, yeah, they have to start looking for solutions out there that can help them. So, have you seen anything that's like interesting consumer behavior after COVID, let's say in both Indonesia and Malaysia?
Malaysia. I think well, the other thing I think I mentioned there were three things. Like the one thing I also didn't mention to you is that a lot of people are now liking mobile technologies. So in my days, I think you're a lot younger, but in my days, right, everybody had a desktop, like huge screens and all that, and things needed to be presented really well, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have this desire to have everything at the literally at the tip of their fingers and be able to do that. But after COVID, everybody is using the mobile phone.
Yeah.
So in a way, all these businesses and all these uncles, they need a quick way as well to look at, what jobs are coming in, like you mentioned, payments, right? Everything needs to be at the tip of their finger and no longer all their fingers, but just one finger, right? So yeah, so that represents an opportunity because then new technologies, new platforms like ours can actually come up and be able to solve that particular use case for all these service professionals. So I think that's good.
Love
You
it.
also asked about you also asked about customers, right? So at the beginning of the pandemic, when they first announced the lockdown, so no one knew what was going on, right? So the entire team came together and say, it's lockdown now. What do we do? Let's panic and let's have plan A, plan B, plan P, plan C, plan D. And it turned out so different than what we expected. So on one hand, the government came and say like, nobody's going around anymore. Everybody stay in your homes and just, this virus is everywhere. It's going to get you, right? So then the bulk of home improvements then pretty much broke down because then there was no construction to be had. But then everybody suddenly realized that they were using their fridges, to store like 2 weeks worth of food. They were washing their clothes more. I don't know why. I suppose to keep the virus at bay. So they started like really using all their home appliances. So we found that our volumes like grew so high. We were struggling to manage customer expectations about getting service professionals to their home. And at the same time, we were kind of like working with the police at the roadblocks and all that to just make sure that our, the essential service workers could actually get through. So it was literally, trying to make sure, marketplace liquidity was very much there. So people started using stuff online and all that. And I think customers fell in love with their homes, or they realized that, I have to make this dwelling place comfortable, right? This is where I am truly me. So then they started doing things like, buying nice chairs and making sure that they have a little space to work, making sure that aircon works, right? And things like that. Doing up their little place, showing that this is where I work. That became a point of pride. Before that, we all had our offices, right? And our homes were really like tiny little tables. But after the pandemic, people realized that, hey, it is actually quite nice to work in my house where no one's disturbing me all the time. And I'm like 10 times more productive. And so that kind of mindset, the whole work from home thing, really changed people's mindset towards their home, right? And today, I think home and living purchases, even on e-commerce or even on platforms online, is a huge percentage of what people buy. It's amazing. The number is something like 40%. It's really high. I mean, if you ask yourself, right, what's being sold on all those like platforms in e-commerce sites, 30-40% of them are home and living. It's amazing.
And COVID not just like getting people to like decorate their home, right? Because they're also spending a lot of, so people are not going back to office full time now, period. right? Like they're
Yeah.
going back
Yeah.
part-time. So that means they will spend more time staying at home. And the home will
Yeah.
get dirty, they will do more things at home. Then they will start, buying furniture is one thing, and second thing, think about maintaining their home environment. And then same thing we have observed, while running Helpling, even not just Singapore, but other countries as well. People are start booking more home services jobs during the weekdays because they're at home.
Yes.
And
Yes.
previously for cleaning, people only book it over the weekend. But now after the pandemic, weekdays morning is the peak demand. And over the weekend, now Saturday start to come back. But you do see there's a period of time where people, because they have to work from home from Monday to Friday, over the weekend, no one wants to book cleaning. They want to go out.
Because they're going out.
Yeah. So I found that super interesting. Like when you run a business in this industry, you're so in touch with the ground, with people's behavior. And then, so I'm very curious, I have a lot of stories from Helpling days. Can you share some of your favorite stories that you heard? Maybe let's start with a happy story.
Okay. Well, a bit of happy story, but just now you talked about like the time in which people ask for services. We learn so many crazy stuff in this journey. Like most people, well, before the pandemic, even when this whole work from home thing came about, people like to book services on Tuesday afternoons. I don't know why. I mean, like, why not Monday? Why not Wednesday? Why not Thursday? Right? It's always Tuesday afternoons. And that's super interesting because then I'm starting like every Tuesday afternoon, I'm wondering like, oh, is everyone like booking stuff, instead of paying attention in my meetings? Are they like booking their home services? What is going on and why Tuesday? I never really understand it. Maybe Monday is all about like, recovering from a hangover, and then Tuesday you realize that, oh, my home is a mess, right? So I need to do something. It could be that, so that was funny. And you know what? It's maintained until today.
Yeah, let me clarify. You mean people will reach out to you on Tuesday afternoon, not
On
the
Tuesday
booking time.
afternoons.
Not the booking time. The booking time starts.
They will put in their requests or their bookings on Tuesday. You are right though, in that a lot of the service times are moving to the weekdays, usually like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right?
Yes.
Especially Fridays, right? So it's moving then. So I know, right, people's productivity that definitely dropped because they were cleaning in the house and all that. So that is interesting, right? And also they continue to book services on Tuesday, and I don't know why. Maybe because they're thinking like, 2 days in advance, right? So they plan 2 days in advance, so they want someone to come on Thursday and Friday, so then they usually book on Tuesday. So that trend has continued. And the very funny thing is that sometimes people book services at 1 in the morning and 3 in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, and I would think like, okay, most service professionals will actually wait until the next morning to pick them up. But no, some service professionals wake up in the morning. Sorry, they wake up at like 3 to actually reply. And there was actually a couple. They were both on our platform. I think they started their businesses for 1 or 2 years, so they're very gung-ho and all that. They would compete with each other who would get up in the morning first and actually pick up the most jobs, right? It was like a couple thing. So I suppose this is something that, when you have the AI, right, it's not going to be, they're not going to have that to do that anymore. So definitely there's a lot of value there. But, the hunger and the excitement around like getting customers, getting customers' requests and being able to process them, I think that one, that one actually amazed me.
I like that. What about a horror story that you've heard from
so many horror stories. I would say that I expected a lot more horror stories. But they have been fairly few and far between, I think. Mostly because we have this rating system, right, that rates the service professional. So firstly, when we onboard them, we actually filter them. We onboard them. We look for them in good places like forums and stuff where somebody said good things about them, and then we filter them like mad. We get all their information, their proof of bank details, proof of address, proof of like sanity, everything, right? Then we run them through tests and training, both online and offline as well. So by the time they kind of like meet the first customer on the system, they are not so bad, right? And then after they finish a job, then the system then sends out like requests for reviews and all that. So we know that by the first 5 or 10 jobs that this guy is kind of okay, or this guy either needs to be retrained or moved to the Boondocks, right? Because he doesn't perform well. But even then, right, sometimes because service industry the people change, right? Like I got this good team member, and then 3 months later that person is gone, right? So there's always that movement. And then when you're dealing people to people, people's moods matter as well, right? What happened to their children? Did they have an argument with their husband, right? Did somebody key in their company quit, right? So all these feelings, they bring their entire persons to work. And so you will find that this person has got 10 straight 5-star reviews and suddenly 1 star because they said this person was rude, did not understand why I needed her to be there at 10:00 and not 10:08, things like that. You don't have that. So the good thing about the technology is it picks it up and it averages it out, right? Yeah, it just kind of averages it out so that, one single mistake will not ruin someone's career, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. But if you're asking for funny stories, so in our very, very early days in Indonesia, we are still testing all these algorithms and all that. We had this washing machine guy who was super genius. So he would pick up the job and then he would go to the customer's house and then he would then pretend to fix all the washing machine, but he would literally gut the whole thing. So he will remove the drum, he will remove the machinery and everything, but only left the skin, right? So then he would say okay, I've done my job, can you click job complete, everything works well. And he goes home and then the customer goes and opens the thing and realizes there's nothing inside, it's just a shell. So that was one of our earlier, very, very early, I think year 2 or something. And then we were like, okay, how do we prevent these kind of things from happening, right? How do you stop someone from gutting somebody else's washing machine instead of fixing it? So so now we have all sorts of controls, like you take a picture before, you take a picture after, and then you upload it, and then and all sorts of things. Thank God we've never had another case like that, but that was interesting.
Yeah, that's really funny. I remember when I first joined Helpling, in the first few weeks, there was a case where there's a freelancer stole the customer's curtains.
How do you steal curtains?
They stole the customer's curtains. We had to file a police report. But then when we called him, he picked up. It's like, "Uncle, did you steal the curtains?" And he's like, "Yes." For what?
So what's your point?
What's your point? Why would I found it extremely interesting because obviously at Helpling we also collect a lot of data and we look at reviews and stuff, right? When you have someone who delivers the job so consistently, they're constantly getting you have 4 categories. Helpling has 3, and there's the other factors. Constantly getting 5 stars for every single category. Then suddenly, like you mentioned, something happens in their life. You suddenly see a 4.7. They were previously getting 5 stars, suddenly 4.7, 4.7. It's like, okay, what's going on? What happened at Helpling was we train every single operations agent to be super data driven. So every single person developed this data sensitivity because they read the data every single day. They read their person, let's say they're in charge of 100 workers. They look at the data every single day. So suddenly if something drops, they will call the worker in and then have a chat with the person. So one time, there's a worker, she's top 5 star. Suddenly, her review just dropped to 4.6, 4.7, It's not bad, but we can see this consistency issues. So we call her in, and then she's like, yeah, I'm just tired all the time. I don't know why, but we'll tell her, okay, eat more, sleep more, make sure you take proper rest on your off day. Don't go to shopping mall and do stuff, right? And then 2 months after, so in Singapore, it's required you have to do medical checkup every 6 months. So at 2 months after she went through, for a medical checkup, turned out she was pregnant. She was pregnant 4 months already. So it showed up in her score. She didn't know she was pregnant.
Yeah,
but we
how
somehow
interesting.
knew, right? This is the power of
Wow.
data. It's crazy.
Yes, so true. So true. Yeah.
Yeah. So what can we go in deeper in, obviously building this matching algorithm is really difficult. You're trying to match one person's request, not just request, someone's going to a home, right, with another person.
Yeah.
So how does this matching algorithm actually works?
Okay. So the algorithm that we have, the most basic that is sort of we've been using for years, right, is to match a job by location. So where is this guy usually, right? Where's his usual space? And then location, his obviously skills, right? Whether or not he's able to do a certain set of skills. So we have a basic level of skills, and then we have this other higher tier for some categories where they are only allowed to do certain types of things. So for example, for cleaners, there's like 2 different tiers. For service aircon, there's also 2 different tiers, right? So customers can then choose to say, I need like somebody who is certified in certain type of skills, right? Or I only want a masseuse who is very premium, right? And say they do pay for that, but then our matching algorithm is then able to distribute jobs to only people who are fulfilling certain types of criteria. Cleaning, for example, certain types of cleaners are super trained by our own team, right? And then they get paid more. And then in masseuse, there are certain types of masseuses who are also super trained by us and certified by us as well. And then some of them prefer females, so then it gets distributed by females, right? Some of them are able to do maybe only certain types of massages that they are trained for, right? So there is a way to actually distribute. So distribution by skills. We're also starting to distribute by, the third one is actually by performance. So how many stars they have, how many of their customers would actually recommend them to their family and friends. We actually use Net Promoter Score rather than just ratings. We actually use Net Promoter Score. So the question we ask them is, would you recommend this person to your family and friends based on the 4 criteria that I mentioned? Quality, value, timeliness, and customer service. And based on that, we really understand that this guy is a quality guy, but he's super grumpy, right? Or this lady is really, really nice and accommodative and everything, but she's always late. So we already have this sort of data on all these service professionals, and we've never really used it, even though we kept collecting all this data over the years, right? With AI, what we are kind of doing is that people in the future will be able to say, I would like a cleaner who is non-grumpy, who always arrives on time, or who tends to wear red shirts, or who speaks Hokkien, or who works well in the morning, whatever that is, right? The data that we collect should be able to say, we know is Kak Aini, she's always wearing red shirts because in all the photos that she submits after every job, she's wearing a red shirt. Well, actually, red shirt is a bad example because they have to use our uniform. So let me say that maybe short hair, right? For some reason, I want a cleaner with short hair. And we know from Kak Aini's photos that she has short hair. And we know from the reviews that she also tends to be friendly, right? Even though maybe she's not so great in her job, whatever that is, right? So we're able to do matching on that level. We also collect a lot of pricing information like quotations and invoices all have to go through our system. So potentially in the future, when somebody says, I would like a carpentry guy, a guy who's able to do a L-shaped kitchen cabinet and this is my budget. Looking at all the quotations that he has through, the AI could potentially say that, okay, this guy looks like he's expensive because his hinges are high quality. This one is cheap, but beware, he tends to be late and he's never had a good timeliness score for a long time. And this person is good on all aspects, but he's grumpy and he'll probably scold you and he's not going to be very accommodative to any of the changes that you want to make, right? So information like that, it will be super, super interesting. It is a question whether or not customers really do want to understand their service professionals like that, but that is the foundation for being able to match really well and be able to top your cousin's recommendation, instead of like taking your cousin's recommendation because you assume that you're exactly like your cousin, you're able then to use the technology to find someone you really want to work with.
Amazing. I love it. I'm generally like very interested in like data that collected that's so close to our lives. I know you are like been running this for 10 years, across 2 different countries. I feel like, people saying that in the future, companies that will go really far are those data rich companies.
Yes.
And I feel like you're probably one of them. Hearing all these data that you've collected, but also wondering, we all know home services market is a really tough market to crack. You're dealing with unsexy stuff, toilet people, like all that things. Been 10 years. Were there any days that feel like, oh God, today is my last day? I don't think I can anymore.
That's a great question, and I'm sure that when you're running HubLink, there were some days where it was so tough and nothing was going well, right? And it's just problem after problem. They all tend to happen at once, right?
Yeah.
During the part of the the month or the year where it's like, oh, I'm really crappy already, and then all these things happen, right?
Yeah.
I've never had the day where I felt that this is my last day running it. But I've had many days when I felt like this is my last week or my last month running it, but I still had a little bit more energy to test this one last hypothesis or try this one last initiative or one last something, So I guess that's why we're here today. I suppose, what makes up for, what makes it is very tough. I mean, I just I cannot undersay this, right? It is quite tough. Because it's so fragmented. There are so many different types, so fragmented. You really need to build a technology and a system that's able to handle all these different things, be flexible enough such that if an exception appears, you can try and see whether you can, include it in your flow. But at the same time, be consistent enough such that you can apply it across all other categories without having like 7 different startups in one startup, right?
Yeah.
So that is the thing. But the data, I mean, looking at all the data and looking at all the interesting things that we learn all the time, really, really, really made a difference. And yeah, I suppose it's really interesting. The toughest, I guess, the challenges that we have now are, balancing the B2C and the B2B side. I think you rightly said at the beginning that we used to be fully B2C, right?
Yeah.
And B2C was very nice because the customer pays us before the job. And our service professionals, the difference between us and many other players out there is that we take a deposit first. So in order to be a service professional, you need to come up with something like $100. And it's not like we're going to use the $100 to, buy tea or whatever. We need the $100, so you are committed. And if anything happens with the customer, we have some space to be able to compensate them, right? For that. I mean, obviously there's warranties and all that, but we need to make sure that you're serious. So in a way, it's very cash flow first kind of business, right? But at the same time, we always have to constantly be there in social media. We have to advertise for customers and all that. So that's the cons of it. The good thing about the B2B space is that, onboard one customer, they give you a few hundred jobs a month, right? So it's a little bit more consistent kind of thing. The margins are thinner though because it's competitive. And then obviously cash flow is a bit more of a problem because they take 30, 60 days to pay you. At the same time, you have to pay your cleaners on time, right? You can't ask them to wait for that big company to pay me first, right? So that one poses as a different challenge. But the good thing is in running both of them side by side, you concentrate the volume to a small set of service professionals so you can crowd out their schedule and make sure that they are happy working with you, either B2C or B2B. B2C with its seasonalities, B2B with its steadiness, but at the same time lower margins. So those two things help to balance out the business and make it a lot stronger and easier to manage when there's two side by side. But at the same time, the team then has to switch gears, right? So we used to be B2C, we are always all about CAC, unit economics, does it make sense to run this business? Can we launch new categories all the time? B2B is all about, is this B2B client happy with us, right? Should I have lunch with him next week, right? Can I get him to pay 10 days earlier so that our cash flow is a little bit better? Can we create a lot of data and metrics and help him look good in front of his boss, right? It's a whole different business there. We are also learning as we go along.
It's amazing. And it seems like you have gone so far since we last chat. And then I think I can see how you will stand out amongst all other platforms, to be very honest with you. Previously, Helpling started out as a pure marketplace, right? We know that does not really work. But if you run a highly managed marketplace, it might work on B2C side. Now with B2B side, I think you are de-risking yourself with the seasonality and all of that. So really kudos to you for this many years of consistency and hardworking. My one last question is, if you have a magic wand tomorrow that can fix one problem in your company, what do you think the problem that you want to fix, and then what will be what's the problem that you want to fix?
So I think the problem that we have in this industry, right, Helpling probably solves it, to a certain degree, but it is customer retention. In a way, after, we've used the technology to find the dream plumber, right, for someone. How do we make sure that the subsequent transactions actually come through the platform again? Now, this plumber is not going to sell you 5 different services a year, right? You're probably going to go to him every 2 or 3 years. But still then, we will like all these transactions to come back to our platform. Well, the good thing is that now the customers have enough incentive to come back, because every time they come back, they rack up their rewards points and all that they're able to offset towards the next service, and that's good. At the same time, the service professional, they are given more and more sort of like incentives. The more times they bring a customer back, and the more times they bring their other customers back to the platform, the good thing is that the schedule is very well kept, so the system can then allocate the right jobs to him at the right times. It will also then give him better things like preferential take rates, more good quality customers in his area. So he kind of like racks up this nice momentum that encourages him to always bring the customers back to the platform. So that has started to work in the last 1 or 2 years, and we are very excited to see how in addition to a marketplace, we now have a platform where service professionals use this to bring in and manage their own customers as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. I just think there's so much potential in this industry, and then there's different markets for different kind of business model. In a market where there's predominantly freelancers, I think a platform will make perfect sense. In a market where there's more companies, platform might not make so much sense. So I do think
absolutely.
Yeah, so I do think you're operating in the right market, and then having platform in a market like, let's say, Malaysia and Indonesia definitely can help with the matching, the scheduling in the middle. So I really look forward to see you become a unicorn in a few years.
Yeah, that's the dream, eh? Same with what you're doing. I really think that being able to automate the whole front part of it, the business, where actually the tradie, she doesn't like that sort of thing, right? Because he's not in there to be customer service. That's not his strength.
Correct.
At the same time, he just wants to focus on the stuff he likes doing, putting his head underneath the sink to fix something, right?
Exactly.
So if you're managing to automate all of that, and things appear in a nice schedule somewhere, I think it really does have value. So
yeah, I learned so much from this episode. Really, thank you for your time. I hope to catch up with you sometimes, in person in the near future. And then I just love seeing more women in this space.